Hey, welcome to Quick Take. I'm your host, along with my host that can't see us, James. Hi, James.
I'm here and I'm happy and I'm excited and all those things that start with words.
There you go. That was helpful.
I know
So
it wasn't
good. I
helpful
can
at all.
tell it's going to be an enlightening episode today.
I'm saving up all my 25-cent words for the actual,
I like it.
meat of the
Okay, there
potato.
you go. There you go. We know it's going to be a good investment here today. And I have 3 children that are out of college and working professionally and making adjustments along the way. But we thought this is a gift to parents who have children who have graduated. And what do they do next, right? Is that really the lens here?
Yeah, I mean, I think that so many of the folks that I speak with who have kids who graduate struggle with how to give their kids advice to make their way into the marketplace. Um, you know, it's not terribly common anymore that kids walk out of school with a job. Many of them, especially in a tough market, are not, walking out the door with a job offer, and so
Yeah.
um, we get asked a lot about how to what kind of guidance would we give to those newly graduated, and so we thought we'd talk about that today.
And I think the reason it's a gift is so many times as parents, we all know that our kids are like, well, you don't really know, even though you
Mhm.
do really know, especially
Right,
when they've just come out of college and they've been
right.
really,
They
they're
know
ready.
everything.
They know everything. So you can forward this to them and give them this insight. We've definitely been there, done that, but it's really around clarity and motivation and confidence.
Yep.
So I'm curious to see what tips you're going to give us today.
Well, what I think is also interesting about these tips is there's two listeners, two types of listeners that this applies to. There are those who can have the experience and the acumen to provide this guidance to their kids, and it doesn't matter what you tell them, they won't listen. And so this is an opportunity for you to provide this episode to your students as a secondary point of view and somebody with some objectivity and somebody who's not mom or dad.
Yes.
Secondly, there is the audience of people who really don't know how to coach their kids.
Yeah.
Maybe they haven't been in the marketplace for a long time and don't really understand what it takes to get a job out there and how challenging it is. So this is also for those who are really struggling with how they would guide people in that position, considering the fact that you most likely have been in the job, in the market or in the working world for many years.
Yeah, and even when you're starting, when your kids are starting college, like all of the way you apply and how you get funding and how they get through it is all so new. You don't know how
Mm-hmm.
to move through
Right.
it until you look back, and then you're like this expert in it. So we also have
Right.
these optics of I have had 3 kids who have gone through it, so I can see it clearly. You're in the midst of it right now. I'm just a lot older than you are, so I'm just going to leave
Well,
that there.
yes. Wow. I'm not touching that
No,
one.
I
That was a
wouldn't.
home. That was a softball that
Yeah, it
only
could blow
would
up.
come
It's
back
a
and blow up
bomb.
and hit. But yeah, I mean, my kids. My son just graduated from college, and I think I certainly tried to give him some advice, but he's a motivated kid, and I think that if I look objectively at the advice I would give to somebody, I think he did a great job of following this advice. Um, I think that I found myself in the same situation of not being quite sure how to tell him how he should do it without doing it for him, and also trying to give him the, the breadcrumbs as to how this system works.
Yeah.
Um, I'm a big believer in teaching, not doing, in this case. And you can get your kid their first job, but I don't. That's going to not really help them with their next job,
Yeah.
unless your name is on the side of the building. It only gets harder after that. So, these are ways that graduates, any graduate, it could be one of our listeners who's gone back and gotten an MBA or gotten a graduate degree. What do you do when you need to stick your toe back into the market?
Yeah. All right. So what's your first tip?
Oh, it's almost super obvious when you come down to it, but it's really it's you got to build a network.
Yeah.
And the one thing that I found speaking to my son was how unique of a concept a network is, and
Hmm.
how that will pay dividends. You forget that your friend group throughout college is your network, and in many times that network is a construct of the classes you were in, the beer you drank, the buildings you lived in, and so there really isn't an understanding of what a network looks like. And so, in helping a graduate understand that if you are in a certain domain, you need to go out and start speaking to people in that domain. You need to go to career fairs. You need to talk to recruiters. You need to talk to um, alumni. I was coaching an executive whose daughter had graduated, and he wanted to get her a job. He knew that was the wrong thing to do. And I suggested just get her a series of interviews that would never manifest a job in different industries, in different fields. And that was a way of him manually, really physically helping her build her network without building her network for her. And it gave her a tremendous amount of confidence with her ability to speak to executives, speak to other people that weren't in her network. And it created a really healthy network for her.
I think that's really good. I would also add, and this is what I noticed when my oldest daughter was in her internship and they ended up hiring her. I remember I got a call, what is a vendor and what do I ask at a vendor lunch? And to your point about the network and not having that
Mm-hmm.
context, I also think it's important to give them some questions to ask, help them understand a little bit about what the self-discovery is, not for them,
Yep. Yep.
but discovering what that leader faces, and not, do you have a job, how do you hire, but it's like, what do you look for in new candidates, how do you, what's your onboarding process look like getting some questions that illustrate that they're interested in understanding kind of what that looks like in any company. And then it might seed some ideas for that other person on the other side of the table as the discussion continues. But sometimes they don't know how to have
Oh, that's
that
so true.
dialogue.
Yeah, I think that the initial thinking is, well, I'm going to get introduced to somebody by you or someone else. And then the first thing out of my mouth will be, do you have a job? And then they will reach into their back pocket and there's a job offer. They just happen to have one
Yeah.
here handy. And here you go. Here's your job offer. That doesn't work. That doesn't happen.
Yep.
But giving them the tools to create a network like a pro, teach them the questions to ask,
Yep.
and send them on their way. Just and remind them this is a journey, not a destination.
Yep.
That this is the process is the important thing. So I
Yeah.
think that's the first real key is to as a new graduate is you have to accept the fact that networking is the way that you will both determine what you want to do when you grow up, but also how to ensure that you can land that first job.
And we all know that it is a journey, but we also don't prioritize it a lot of times to do it
Mm-hmm.
for ourselves. And it's not about what am I going to get out of this? It's like, what am I going to give? And
Yep.
so
Yep.
helping them after that conversation to tease out, what did you learn? Did you
Yeah.
learn that you want to work with this type of individual? What did you learn about the company? How did you,
Mm-hmm.
because they
Mm-hmm.
are, to your point, shaping what does that role look like? Because they may not even know. And these help
Right. Right.
self-discovery on this side of the table as well.
Yeah. I think it's really difficult for them to have the perspective, and I think that this is a way for them
Yep.
to do that.
All right. What's the second tip?
The second tip is you've got to really create a value proposition in your head so you can communicate that. Actually, I should put these in a different order because certainly as you're networking, you should have this value proposition in your head. And by value proposition, I look at a lot of new resumes, uh, student resumes, where they will just say something they did. And they don't understand that there is value in that and that they learned things in that they did. And so you've got to tell the story. I interned at the FDIC is not interesting. I interned at the FDIC and I learned about credit ratings, risk profiles, and how small to mid-sized banks manage credit risk. That's the story that you need to tell. So as you look at the work that you did, and obviously you have a very complex, a very limited resume. You've got to craft that compelling value proposition for your given what you have and given the experience and skills that you have.
I also, yes, I think that's really important. I would also add to that, as you look at that resume and those places that you did and the skills that you pulled out,
Mm-hmm.
what else does that tell? What's the story about you? I'm a
Yep,
self-starter.
that's
I have
exactly right.
passion around what I do. I am detail oriented. What are the
Mm-hmm.
other things that are kind of more global that say this is just naturally who I am? And you can tell
Right.
that by the fact that I went out and looked for this. This wasn't something that my college or my university
Mm-hmm.
told me to look for. That says
Right.
this is the story of me.
Yep, I think that's so true, and I think that what I that piece of that um, to help people I speak with frame this correctly, I remind them that I worked with an individual who was just a graduate student, and they wanted to get into technology, but they had a philosophy degree, and they said, "Look, I like tech, but I'll never get I have a philosophy degree." And I said, "Look, but you have to understand that what if you can explain to me what you learned out of a philosophy degree that applies to this, then you have a great story." And critical thinking, problem solving, ability to communicate, complex ideas, all were part of a philosophy degree
Yeah,
and certainly can be applied. And so, understanding how you can take those learnings and apply them to the industry or the job that you want, that's you. That's
that's
you
exactly right.
crafting the story.
Yep.
That's you crafting the
Yeah, you
story.
have to look at it from a lot of different angles and you need to help them see it from
Mm-hmm.
that perspective. All right, what's the third tip?
Yeah. Well, the third tip is you'd have to really start working on these micro opportunities to create more of a brand. And I think that it's those little things that maybe you hadn't considered were important, which are the groups that you belong to, the meetings that you can go to. It's the Littleton Java group that meets at the Starbucks every Thursday. Understand that creating these micro credentials, if you will, allow you to get seen by other people. If you are part of a group and a club, and there's people there that are of similar interest to you, they might find you through that system.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people that graduate through business and that they take online courses, or that they will be part of some job share groups that they can do some work, and just getting those tiny wins, creating those micro credentials, I think
Yeah.
goes towards a much larger fabric.
Yeah, it's like what got you into college, those extracurricular things that you did that were so important. That shows
Yes.
that you're motivated, that shows where your interests are, what you want to do. And when you were talking also, as I've talked to young up and coming professionals, there also is this tension. Here's your bonus. There's this tension between being confident and being curious. You
Mm-hmm.
want you we all have talked to that person that says they're the best thing since sliced bread, and they're
Right. Right.
convinced that they are, and that there's something that's good about having that confidence that comes from my value
Mm-hmm.
proposition, the things that I've done, and articulating that in a way, but then seeing how that lands with the other
Right.
person. Are
Right.
you are
Right.
you are you engaging them to give you more, or are you kind of
Yep.
shutting them down like I can't wait to get this person away from me because they're just
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
self-focused or not listening very well. So it's having that
Yeah.
poise and that self-awareness in those moments as well.
Yeah. And I think that that's just that comes with practice. One of the
Yep.
things that I as part of the networking experience, that first tip I gave is, I think it is meeting a lot of people, practicing your elevator pitch,
Yep.
practicing the way that you think, practicing the way that you describe yourself, practicing how you answer open-ended questions like, what do you want to do?
Yeah.
What do you like? What motivates you? You have to have a tight answer for that. And that's where creating a network of people, learning to ask a lot of questions, that is so important as a graduate to find out where you land.
Yeah, I would say before you go back on giving us the highlights of your three tips is also I would backdoor. I would ask, if these are friends of mine that are doing this interview, quote unquote interview with one of my uh, people that live with me, kids.
Yeah, there we go.
There we go.
I mean, I don't know. What are
We
we
go.
talking about? Do you
Circular,
have a
how'd they
hotel
do?
you're now running?
Yeah, how'd they do?
Yes.
How'd they show up? What suggestions would you give them? Then you can get some context around what the dialogue looked like from the other
Mm-hmm.
side, and not just from your
Yep.
kid.
Oh, for sure. And I think that, but by that same token, you have to um, help that conversation be a conversation and not an interview,
Yes.
right? Because
Yeah.
it's better when the person that they can meet with will say, I didn't understand anything you just said, or and so there is a dialogue versus a report card
Yeah.
of the interview. So
Yep.
I think that's great advice. Great advice.
All right. What are your three?
So the first one I think is you need to really. I'm going to do them out of order and do them the order I did them in, and maybe reorder them in a way that's a little more logical. First, you need to work on your brand. You need to find a message, a way for you to communicate the value proposition of the things that you do, so that story is clear and crisp. So you can talk about the classes you took, the projects you did, the people you met, and craft that into a cohesive story.
Yep.
Secondly, you want to start networking like a pro. This isn't, taking people out for drinks. This is just getting to know people, getting to know what kind of people are in the industry, actually meeting lawyers if you want to go into law, meeting coders that if you want to go into coding, who actually does work in pharma, what kind of people work in pharma.
Yep.
That's really huge. And then third, I think work on those micro credentials. I think you described it really well, Susie. It's those extracurriculars that got you into college. They'll get you into your next role. But that is a thing that I've done throughout my career. I always have an extracurricular going on. And so often it's those side gigs and side projects that pay the big difference.
Yeah, such good tips. And remember, they don't have to be leveraged when they graduate. They can start before,
Right.
which I think is another key component.
Yep,
All right.
yep.
This was great. Thanks, James.
Take care.